Hello, I'm Sondra Gilman, Chairman of the American Theater Wing, with our board president, Doug Leeds. Welcome to today's program, where we'll be talking about the journey to the Broadway stage with some of the theater's newest and brightest stars.
We'll be back later to tell you more about the work of the American Theater Wing. But right now, please join us for another edition of Working in the Theater.
Often the road to Broadway is filled with triumphs and trials, temporary jobs, and the kindness of friends and family. But our guests today have not only weathered that journey, but achieved success on the stage by 30. Hello, I'm Pia Lindstrom for the American Theater Wing, and joining us to share their experiences are some of the theater's newest and brightest stars. Ashley Brown from Mary Poppins, Jonathan Groff from Spring Awakening, Alison Pill from Mauritius, and John Lord Young from Jersey Boys. Welcome, kids.
Thank you.
How old were you when you knew you wanted to do this?
I started working in Toronto when I was 10, so I've been going for like 10 years. Okay. So 10 years, there's been dues paying, I suppose.
Yeah.
Over 10 years of work that I'd like to forget. It's very gratifying to be in New York doing theater.
Yeah. What did you do in Toronto? You started, how old were you when you first started
I was like 10 and 11.
10, and what did you do?
I did TV movies, forgettable movies, and but it was just constant work, and I was so pleased. I was constantly happy to be doing anything.
John Lord, you had a little bit of you put in your 7 years or something like that before you had this enormous success in Jersey Boys. What were some of the other things you had to do?
I actually started acting when I was a little kid, just in a community theater and around the country. My father was in the Air Force, so I moved around a lot, and theater was sort of like a way to find family in a new environment. I lived in Nebraska and Alabama and upstate New York, near Canada, near Montreal. So had been doing it a lot, and then got to New York and just, busted my behind doing, off-Broadway plays and storefront theaters on Ludlow Street, some regional productions and, some children's theater all over the map. For 7 years.
Did somebody do anything in high school? Were you in high school plays and
Definitely.
things?
That was when I did my first musical. Was when I was a freshman in high school. I was Tiger Lily and Peter Pan, and it was a really good moment.
Did you see the Mary Martin version of that?
Yes.
I used to watch that every day.
Me too.
Ugga Wigwam picnic.
Yes, Ugga Bugga Wigwam.
I know.
I would practice that. I would practice that for hours, just the leaning. Yes, my mom made my costume.
Oh wow.
Were you in high school in a play in high school?
I did all my high school plays. All of them, yeah. I loved it.
I loved it too.
High school work?
No, I went to a program for people with outside commitments. That's what it was called.
Is that therapy or what is that?
It was actually mostly athletes, so I was the freakish actor, amongst skiers and gymnasts, and I was like, oh. I had no idea how to connect with anybody. It was like a school full of jocks. But I did do Grease when I was in grade 8. I got to play Sandy in Grease, the height of my theatrical career, really.
And you, John Lord, anything in high school?
I didn't do any theater in high school because there really wasn't arts in high school. So I did it mostly before high school, and then I moved around a lot. So I moved to upstate New York for high school, and there was no real arts curriculum there. So I did one play my senior year.
Did you know you could sing, though? I mean, you were singing somewhere.
Sort of by myself.
In your bedroom?
And as a little kid, I did. But in high school, I did sports and was at student government and stuff, and I did one play my senior year. I played Jack in Brighton Beach Memoirs, the father. With shoe polish in my hair. In a bathrobe,
Oh my God.
Well, how old were you when you knew you wanted to do this, Alison? What age did you say, this is what I want to do?
I knew I wanted to perform. Like when I was really young, I was at the National Ballet School, and then I was in choir, and then I was just doing anything I could to be on stage. But yeah, no, when I was 10, I just sort of realized that's what I wanted to do.
And you had the same experience? Well, how old were you when you said this? I want to be on stage.
You know, I watched the Mary Martin, Peter Pan, and Mary Poppins when I was little, and knew that there was something about that, and went to go see shows when I was little. And I just always sort of wanted to do it. And I remember actually when I went to see Beauty and the Beast on Broadway, my first Broadway show, I was in the trumpet trio at my elementary school. And
what does a trumpet trio entail?
There's just three of us. I was the middle one.
Okay.
Yeah, we played at events.
Okay.
And and my fifth grade teacher was like, at intermission of Beauty and the Beast, she was like, someday you are going to be down there in that pit playing the trumpet. And I had never done a play before, but I looked at her and I was like, no, I don't want to be in the pit. I want to be on stage. It was just something that I connected with from the beginning and just sort of always knew that I wanted to do.
Mm-hmm. So I'm curious about where the drive comes from, because between wanting to do something and then pushing your way through, do a little self-analysis. Where do you think this drive came from?
I think just the love that you have. I mean, it's just something that's just so amazing about being on stage. And for me, it didn't really come together until high school. I knew I loved to do it. And you know, when you're little, your parents kind of push you and everything and see what you kind of take to. And I'm not the sporty one, so no sports really worked out for Ashley. But you know, you just try to find what you love to do and how many things you sacrifice to be able to do this. And you know, even though high school dances aren't like the be all end all, but there's a lot of those things that I missed so I could rehearse, and like I love to practice and to be on stage and to be with people. And I think that's where it came for me, is like I'm still like that. I still love the rehearsal process, and I think it takes a certain individual to actually enjoy something like that. You know, a lot of people will be like, rehearsal, that's work, and you know, but it's something that we love to do so much that the fact that we are able to make a career out of it is just unbelievable, especially at our age. It's just, you know, it's still surreal to me that I'm in a Broadway show, much less this is my second Broadway show, and it's amazing. It's still very like, I have to wake myself up sometimes.
As far as like where the drive comes from, I think that for me it was the love turning into a sort of obsession with it, and wanting to do it at all times, no matter what it was or where it was, and I didn't have a lot of education and didn't take a lot of classes, but learned so much from experience and sort of on-the-job training. And I became so obsessed with doing a play everywhere, no matter where it was, because I was learning so much every time I did a new thing.
Because I feel like that's where you learn the most, is actually doing it. You can read, that's what makes our business so crazy, is you can read so many books, you can take all the classes, but actually the best tool is actually doing it. You know, it's really, that's where I feel like I'm obviously, you know, still growing and learning from all these people that I work with daily, which I feel so lucky to be able to do that as well.
I don't really see it as a drive. I just don't know what else I could possibly do. So any sacrifice for it doesn't really necessarily feel like that. It's just something, it's a need. You know, it's not
a need, not a drive.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
I mean, I know I have to work because it's what I do, you know.
John Lloyd, I think it maybe needs a better word than drive, because you came up against some walls there, and yet you continued to go in that same direction. Where does that need come from?
It's seeking comfort, I think. It's seeking a place where you feel truly comfortable. You know, I never really wanted to do everything so much as I wanted to find the thing that I felt comfortable doing, where sort of I filled in, you know, because there's nothing I'm so unhappy if I feel like the auditions that I'm getting or whatever are things that I'm not very interested in, and I get really anxious about it. And then when I intersect with a role that I really like and feel happy with, then I feel like I'm filled in. The rest of the time, I sort of feel like I'm a ghost a little bit, you know? Seeking that thing that I want to be doing.
You went to college, you went to Brown. So did you study acting there?
Yeah, I did. I studied, it was a liberal arts school, so I studied sort of everything. I even took a year and studied in Spain and didn't study theater at all, just art history and Spanish and you know.
Is that useful? Do you find that kind of education useful? Because some of you had this and some of you went right to work.
I found that college was a place for me to sort of become a person and figure out who I was, and that again, when I find a role that intersects with the interesting parts of who I am, then that's probably expressed more fully because I had that time to explore who that was and figure out who that was. And because I didn't focus so much on the craft of acting and learned from the people I was around, I think that's helped me sort of understand certain subtleties that maybe I would miss.
Did any of you have teachers that were important to you? Allison, did you have a teacher that really...
No, I mean, I never trained formally. I didn't really have time. I mean, I trained formally when I was playing.
This is on-the-job training.
You know, yeah.
It's called.
But I do think that one essential of being an actor is just reading, reading everything, reading plays and books, and I think there's so much that can be brought. I think when you're talking about the subtleties and being able to study human behavior in itself, and their great novels are perfect for trying to figure out human behavior and desires, and that's what we're trying to figure out every night.
And observing people too. You know, there were certain points when I wasn't working as an actor, or I'd just go out into New York with my journal and just watch people and kind of like imagine what they were thinking and doing, you know. And you can do that as a theater actor because you're relatively anonymous. Only 1,000 people or so see you a night. You know, I'm not on TV. I'm on stage, so I can still do that to an extent. So reading books and whatever, I've always been fascinated with people and what makes them do what they do and why they are the way they are.
New York is the best place to watch people.
To watch people.
Oh my gosh.
You just go to
you
Penn
actually-
Station and watch people coming to the train.
Asher, you went to the Cincinnati Conservatory of Music, so you had classical training
Yeah,
there?
I mean, I was got a BFA in musical theater, and I felt for me it was just really important because I come from a small town. Nobody in my family's in theater. I didn't really know what I was getting into other than I knew I was going to do it. And I've always just been kind of set, like I will be moving to New York and I will do this regardless of what I have to do to get there. I mean, obviously not take people down. I didn't mean it like that.
Wow!
Because I didn't mean it
Watch
like that.
out! We've heard about actors.
Slash your throat. Not like that.
We know.
My mind was made up, you know, that this is what I love to do. And for me, I had a lot of growing up to do because I came from, I was very, you know, the Southern Belle. And I just feel like if I would have moved to New York after high school, I wouldn't be able to handle it. Sure, there is a lot of rejection, and I know people think that I've gotten every role that I've auditioned for, and it's just untrue, you know? And, you know, I think just being able to pick yourself back up is something I had to learn, and to know that if you don't get a role, it's not because you're untalented or, you know, it's just there's a lot of things that go into you landing a role. And so I feel for me, college was really important. You know, just if, like you said, like figuring out yourself. I came across a great voice teacher in Pensacola, Florida, who I still take from. And her name's Deborah Ross. And, you know, she put me in all the contests. I trained classically. And she just, you know, always kind of pushed me along. And then I came across really great people who said you should go to Cincinnati. I mean, I didn't know where I was supposed to go to school. I didn't know. You know, I'm like, where do I go to theater school? You know, I don't know. And so I just came across really great people who gave me some really great advice. And, you know, college was hard. It was a really, like, a big turning point for me in learning. Like, there were days when I was like, gosh, I don't know if I can do this. But I just had to pick myself up, and I was so much stronger, you know, knowing that I've gotten through a lot of bad things, and I wasn't always cast, and I wasn't always the star. And I think that was good that I wasn't always, you know, up front, because I think it's good to be a team player and to know what it's like to not be the star. I think you have a lot more feelings towards people, you know, and a sense of group, you know, when you've been in the back. And because everybody's like, you probably growing up, you're probably always in the front. I'm like, there were times when my face was about this much on the curtain, you know, with a big choir, you know, like this is all you got. And so I think it's a very humbling thing. So I just kind of took it a step at a time and came across good people.
And Jonathan, was there a teacher that you remember that helped with voice or acting?
You know, It's interesting to think back to like there was my 8th grade teacher, my 8th grade drama teacher, Mrs. Fisher, who said, you know, you have something, and that was like where it started. But then as far as like beyond that, when I think back to the teachers that most influenced me, it was my math teacher in high school and my English teacher in high school. We read a lot of books in English, and those ideas and things that you think about, and the discipline, because I didn't like math that much, but the discipline of getting down and doing the work no matter what, like things that I learned from them were really, really important.
Did you get an agent early?
I didn't, no. I really wanted, when I was a senior in high school, I was a really good student, and I was one of those kids that did everything, as by the books and whatnot. And I thought, okay, my junior year I started like researching colleges, and I read the do's and don'ts on the Cincinnati Conservatory internet list, and like I knew everything, like what I was supposed to do, and had planned out all my college auditions, and I was going to go there for 4 years, and then I was going to move to I had it all sort of planned out. And then my senior year I auditioned in the city for the purpose of getting ready for my college auditions, because you can't really audition that much in Lancaster, PA. So I auditioned for this tour of The Sound of Music, and I got it. And I was like, oh, I don't know, this is messing up my plan. I was supposed to go to college for 4 years, but I can't deny this opportunity to see the country and do a long run of a show, which I'd never done before. And so I decided to go on tour and defer college for a year. And then when we rehearsed for the tour, we were in New York for 2 weeks. And I'd visited here on bus trips, but I'd never really lived here before. And from the moment that I got to the city, something in the city, I was taking dance classes, I was going to rehearsal, I was seeing shows, we're taking runs in Central Park, and there was like something about this city that I could feel myself growing. Every second of the day, there was so many people, and it wasn't just Amish. It was something different. and
it is something that is noticed about New York a lot.
Yeah.
It's
Not
not
very
just Amish.
Amish.
Right. There's more than that.
There's more than that. But it's sort of like and I found that as like an artist too, like as a performer, you sort of have to go. At least for me, I understand that the comfort, like finding comfort and finding something that you sort of connect with, but also finding the discomfort and finding the scary thing to do. And the safe thing would have been to go to college, because that was what was right. And I did this tour for the year, and I was still supposed to go to college. But for whatever reason, I felt this connection to New York and this connection to the city, and I didn't want to leave to go on the tour because I loved living here so much. So after the tour was over, I was like, people thought I was crazy. They were like, you have to go to, I was going to go to Carnegie Mellon. It's such a great school. Everybody leaves with an agent. You get great training. And I was like, no, there's something about that city, those 2 weeks that I spent there, there's something in here, like in my gut, that's telling me that I am going to grow the most from sort of leaping off and going there and waiting tables and struggling, as opposed to going to school for this time. So I just moved to the city after that tour and waited tables for 9 months and found an acting teacher and a voice teacher and sort of like pieced together my own version of a college education.
I felt the same sort of thing. I was as like crazy overachieving student girl, like everything had to be right, like 95 isn't enough, like really like sick. And I really wanted to go to Oxford. It was the only school I wanted to go to. And I interviewed there, and I got my rejection letter. And I had done a play in New York off Broadway. And so I'd lived here for 2.5 months, my last year of high school. And so I'd been doing chemistry in the main reading room at the big library, and like trying to figure out, like I was like, I don't know calculus, man, this is crazy. And then go off and do my play at night. And so it was a little wild. And then the following year I had total plans to go to college and get myself an education, and I got rejected from Oxford, and then I went upstairs to my room for 5 minutes, and I was just like, okay. Came back downstairs, and I was like, Mom, Dad, I'm moving to New York.
Wow.
And within a month, I came down, found roommates on Craigslist, like came down, stayed in this crazy hostel, which was like Barton Fink. I seriously felt like I was in Barton Fink, and there were like cigarette burns on the blanket, and a sink in the corner of the room, and a shared toilet in the hallway. It was insane, and I was like, okay, this is what I'm signing up for. Okay, this is my hostel. And I found 2 great roommates in the East Village, and within a week of having moved here, 2 plainclothes cops came to my door and were like, "Do you know anything about the brothel a couple doors down?" And I was like, "No, but I'll let you know if I find anything out. Thank you. Could you guys like some lemonade or something?" I was like, "Okay, now I'm moving to New York, and this is what I've signed on for." But it was just because I loved it. Like walking through Tompkins Square to get to the subway, I was like, oh. There's nothing better than the energy that this city gives you. Walking around, even as much as I hate it, Times Square, trying to get through all those people.
Yes.
But even still, there's something that just fires things up in everybody that lives here. I think it's so worthy.
Let's talk about auditions a little bit. How many times did you have to audition for Jersey Boys, for example?
I auditioned for it before they went and built it in La Jolla, California, and I didn't get it. Mostly because I wasn't ready to get it. I'm not a very good auditioner.
I hate it.
I wish I were, but it just feels like. But I grew up Catholic, and it feels like a test, and like the auditioners turn into nuns. It's like, it's just
true.
It's really nerve-wracking. I like to just if someone invites me to do a reading and then and I'm doing it and I don't have to audition, I'm much more free because I've been invited to work.
Then? I mean, they found you somehow.
I auditioned for that, and it's obviously a very specific and difficult role.
You play Frankie Valli, and you have that
to look like
incredible
Frankie and all of that stuff. So I knew that when I went away and did it for a year, because it didn't come to Broadway until a year later, and I was an understudy in a play at the Paper Mill Playhouse, and just watching from the wings. And I read on Playbill.com or something that it was coming to New York, and without the Frankie Valli, the guy who played Frankie Valli. So I just knew that they would go back to the drawing board and that I'd be in auditions again. Because I had a good audition before. I mean, that La Jolla production, Des McAnuff, our director, said, "Don't take any other jobs without calling us first." So I was like, "Oh, I think I got this," and then I didn't, But I remembered that he said that then. So they made me audition 5 or 6 times more. I was just exhausted because it was like, "You're not convinced yet?" Or, I don't even know if I want it anymore. That 5th or 6th time, I was just like, "Oh God!" And then they put me in a room with the choreographer, and I can't dance.
Oh.
And I was like, "Well, now I'm certainly not getting it." So I called, my family, and I was like, "I'm, despondent about it. I'm not going to get it." And then I got a phone call that I did.
And then you won a Tony for it.
Right. well, yeah, but not, not the next day.
No.
But yeah, it was. I mean, it's nerve-wracking, and sometimes even more nerve-wracking when you are getting close to something, because then you could still not get it. And like Ashley was saying, you don't get everything you audition for, and the rejection isn't necessarily personal, although you're the person rejected. It's more that it took a long time for me to stop resenting that certain offices would never call me in for something or whatever, or to get mad at people, because when they don't give you the job, then you're thrust back out into your waitering job or whatever. You're like, "Don't you realize that when you don't cast me, my life sucks?" But then it took me a long time to realize that it's not, no doesn't mean not now, or no doesn't mean never, it means not now. And then you just have to keep stepping up to the plate. I still struggle with that, and I don't know.
Well, how many times did you audition to do Mary Poppins?
9 times.
9 times.
9 times over a period of 4 months. And I had done a tour on the record with Disney that I got right out of school, and then I was playing Belle at the time, and they were putting up Tarzan at the same time. So I auditioned, my first audition was about in January, and I auditioned about 3 times. and going back, and I was so nervous and I was so bad because there's that thing where I worked for Disney, but yet this is Cameron Mackintosh too, so I had a lot of people, and they weren't just going to give it to me, you know. I mean, it's just a very different than the stuff that I have to do, a lot more things that I have to do as Mary Poppins and as Belle or on the tour. And so I auditioned so many times, and there's that expectation because they have seen me do things, and there's that expectation to fill and yet surpass. And so I put so much pressure on myself, and I was like, you know what, Ashley, it's not like your life sucks. You're on Broadway, you're playing Belle, you know, you've been in New York for 2 months, you know, like, give it a rest, you know, you're fine, trying to like pump yourself up. But then I kind of took a break, and then I went back for my last 6 times in 1 week. And I had sprained my ankle in Beauty and the Beast. My foot got stuck in a track, and I fell. Yeah, that was graceful. I felt really great in front of 1,500 people, place planted.
Oh, God.
So I had to go to my physical therapist every morning. I know, clumsy Ash. So I had to get my ankle wrapped every morning and go, and I was auditioning from 11 a.m. to about 6 p.m. and running over and doing Beauty and the Beast at night. And you know, and all these people, I mean, it's Tom Schumacher, who's head of Disney, Cameron Mackintosh, Matthew Bourne, Stephen Mear, Richard Eyre, all these people. I'm like, could I just die now? Because it's just all these people are watching me. So I sang Practically Perfect probably a million times. I had to tap dance. I had to learn Jolly Holiday. I'm surprised they didn't make me fly without strings because I'm telling you, I did. And it's like you said, it's exhausting. And then you start really realizing how attached you are now and how involved you are and like how much I want this and not how much do I want it, but now I have a connection with her, with the character. And I know how let down I'm going to be if I don't get it, because you put all this time and this energy and memorizing your sides and going in and having that adrenaline to be on top of it, that they're teaching me the dances in front of everybody. Like I don't even get to know their room to learn it. So they're seeing how fast I pick it up. You know, I'm dancing, I'm reading with, you know, everybody, and it was just, you know, having that adrenaline for so long on a sprained ankle and pretending like it didn't hurt.
And everybody thinks of Julie Andrews. That's what I don't understand. How you could even have the courage
and that's another thing is, you know, it's just that pressure that I just had to go in with a whole new thing. I'm like, she did it perfect. There's no redoing that, you know, and I tried to not copy her because I knew people would come in expecting that. And so I kind of just brought my own thing and just took a chance. And hopefully, like, it could be all wrong or it could be all right.
Even though the sound of it is something quite atrocious, if you say it loud enough, you'll always sound precocious. Supercalifragilisticexpialidocious.
She's great. So it's hard.
I don't know how you ever got the part in Lieutenant of Inishmore because you look like such a sweet little child, and you play the most vicious, horrible person in probably the bloodiest play I've ever seen on the stage.
I am.
When you showed up to play this part.
Well, you see, I knew Martin McDonagh. He had seen a play I'd done, and I'd gone in once, like a year before it ever happened, and then I went in again when they switched to the Atlantic. It was originally going to be another company that was going to produce it, and then they ended up hiring the girl who had done it originally in both Galway and then in London. Carrie Condon.
Yes.
And then after all that, they let me come in and do it, and I was it was a play that I'd wanted to do for like 2 years of just I had to play this girl, this awesome, crazy girl. And I hadn't seen the production, and I had some concept of what it was going to be like, but until I got, you guys still had the flies and the blood and the cracks by the time you were there, didn't
At the
you?
Atlantic, totally.
Yeah.
I need the
We'd be like,
blood.
why
Yeah,
is
like
there
why
blood
are
on
there flies everywhere? What is this sticky red, like, and there's like the stain in the driveway from all of our food coloring blood we would pour at the
It was
Atlantic.
everywhere.
Oh
my gosh.
that was something. Well, I mean, now let's look deeply into your character here. How do you draw from this nice, pleasant exterior this incredible thing that came out?
I have no idea. It's the magic of just stepping into somebody else's bones. And I read a lot of Irish history, and then just Martin McDonagh's dialogue flows so beautifully. And once the accent came, it sort of came hand in hand with the dialogue because it's written in such a dialect. And And then I just started getting angry about Irish history and getting really into it. And then, they handed me a gun, and I had done this movie with guns, so I learned a lot about them and learned, it's like this weird, jack of all trades thing you get as an actor. Like, you're suddenly studying, I know far too much about ammunition from this movie I did. And I know a lot about Irish terrorism, and it's just like everything kind of came together. But it's just, I love these characters that have so much anger. I mean, there's a real vicious anger to most people, I think, if you dig deep enough. There's so many different ways that people deal with anger, either with, shooting or coming back to get some sort of closure, or just trying to get out of, the gutter. They're all so different. And they're fun to play.
I have no character. What I have is two tiny, tiny slips of paper, so small that they barely exist, and I'm gonna take them, and I'm gonna stab myself in the chest with a pair of really sharp scissors, and then I'm gonna put those two tiny, tiny slips of paper inside my body.
Jonathan, I read you said something once that was quoted, that you have to look for what makes you angry. That's what you tried to find in that character you play in Spring Awakening?
Yeah, I was that goody two-shoes in high school. And so now you're playing the atheist, rebel student in the classroom. And so it took a long time. It took a really long time for me to find that in myself. And God bless Michael Mayer for being so patient with me. But it sort of becomes that thing where everyone, what I found, for me at least, is that everyone sort of knows what's right and wrong for them, and has that desire when someone's being wrong to stand up and fight for it. But do we suppress that feeling, or do we let it go? And I'm such a yes person in my life, and was such a yes person as a student. And yes, okay, whatever you say, I'll do it. Whatever you say, I'll do it. And through the process of finding that person who knows exactly what they believe and is so confident in it that they're willing to fight for it, really ended up being completely liberating to do on stage 8 times a week. And then also in my own personal life, it affected me off stage as well as on. Not that I became an angry atheist, but that it forced me to start thinking for myself, and forced me to start not always saying yes before I figured out what I personally believe in. And it really helped me grow up as a human being as well, which was, I think that's great when you have a play that does both of those things for you.
Yeah. Well, how do you find the anger within yourself? You said this director helped you. Well, what would you do to help another person find their anger?
Michael's going to be mad at me for telling the story, but I can tell you an exact moment. I was trying to find it. I was working really hard. I was getting frustrated that I couldn't find it. I was getting really frustrated. I kept thinking that I was doing it, and he'd be like, no, he's very honest. No, you still suck, is what, No, it's still not good. No, it's bad. No, it's still bad. Which is why I love Michael Mayer, because he always puts out the truth. And
yes, it is. You worked
and
with
finally,
him.
one day in tech rehearsal, I don't even know if he remembers this, but one day in tech rehearsal, we were doing the beating scene, and I was so nervous because we're about to start previews, and I still
haven't... just describe the beating scene so people know what you have to be... We'd like to hear
in the play. Yeah, in the play.
Here, we'll demonstrate.
Right.
Beat her up. She's used to it. She's beaten up at every play she's in.
There's this scene where Leah Michelle, who plays Wendla, she wants to feel her character. She doesn't feel anything. She wants to feel something, and her friend is beaten, and so she comes to me, Melchior, her intellectual friend in the woods, and she says, "I've never really felt anything. Will you beat me with this stick?" And he's like, "No, I'm not going to beat you with the stick." She's like, "Come on, beat me with a stick." And she's like, "No, I'm not going to beat you with the stick." And she touches him. She's like, "Beat me with a stick." And he's like, "Okay." And then he goes for it. And so there was this thing where that's where my character really got set off. And I've been trying to find it, and again was getting so frustrated I couldn't quite get it. And then Michael just came up to me and looked at me, literally ran up on stage in front of the entire cast, in the middle of tech rehearsal, whatever, and he was like, "It is the middle of tech rehearsal and you still haven't gotten angry. Look me in the eye and tell me what makes you angry." And he's went on this he's yelling at me, and I'm trying to make it happen. It's not like I'm not trying. And he's like, "What makes you angry? What makes you angry?" And I was like, "You." when you belittle people, like it was like you're making me, and he like made me like, and that I took that and ran with it, you know, and then all of a sudden, you know, there's so much of the pressure of the adults in our play and all that stuff, and I was using the way that experience I was having and the frustration of trying to find this thing, and throughout all of that, and then, you know, the opportunity of being able to run a show for 2.5 months off Broadway and do it every day, and really, every day you're like, oh, it gets deeper and deeper, and you start to figure it out more and more, and then all of the nuances and the details sort of came out. But it was that one moment that I was like, fuck you.
It's cable.
It's cable.
Oh, that's right.
Oh, the people in Lancaster are not going to like that.
That's okay.
Can we cut that?
Maybe. Let's go.
What can you do?
The part you're playing, the Frankie Valli part, I mean, the whole Jersey Boys has a subtext that is not all fun and games. I mean, it's got a darker subtext. So you actually have to do some acting. No, you're not just singing in their lightweight things. Did you have any of this difficulty or any of this thing to find the really deeply serious side of these people? No.
That was the easy part.
That was
for
the
me.
easy part.
I mean,
you found it easy. You found anger easily.
Yeah, I'm always, you know, my agents are always telling me, you need to do comedy. You need to do something, smile, you know. So I actually have a hard time playing lighter stuff because I'm a darker person, and I think down in the core. So that part, that evolution for me in Jersey Boys is I savor it because he gets darker and darker as the show goes on, as his life falls apart, you know.
We're gonna pay back every penny Tommy owes you.
What the, Frankie? Wait a minute.
Let me handle this. It's a lousy few $100,000. We got something going here. It took a lot of work and a lot of years. So the group takes the debt.
This is his problem. Why do we take his debt?
Because we're not gonna let it come apart.
And also, even that first act, you know, because it's the story of the band, and he wants to be a superstar, and it's not happening. There's an edge and the frustration there that it actually very reminiscent of, you know, early years in New York struggling as an actor, you know. So all of those angers and those frustrations and that emotional kind of storminess is that I have as a regular person is right on the surface with the character too. And I carried into the songs too. You know, one of the things about the way this show is constructed is that, yes, the songs are, when you hear them on the radio in their original context, so, you know, they have a sort of lighter nature, but they're also, they happen in our story in such a way that, you know, if someone has just left me and then suddenly I'm singing a song, I don't allow myself as an actor to then subtract or divorce or put like a boundary in between what's just happened, and then when I start to sing, I let it spill over into the song, so that there's always something frustrating or heartbreaking spilling over into all of the singing. And Act 2, I get to do that with in an unfettered way. I mean, and it's just like taking a bath in my own, like, you know, emotions in Act 2, which is gratifying because it's, as Vanessa Redgrave called it, it's like Dr. Theater. You know, you go to the theater and you let all that stuff out, and whatever's pent up during the day, you can let it out. And I'm so happy that the way that this show is constructed, because it is a catalog show, and I've seen other ones, that I can be an actor in it and sort of let it all hang out and have my personal catharsis every night, instead of being a cheerleader for some band that existed 60 years ago, 40 years ago.
Then how come you can sing like a girl?
That's genetic. I don't know the answer to that. You have to ask a doctor that question. But you know what's funny?
Did you just were born that way with this thing, or you developed it?
Frankie has a similar story, except, you know, obviously he came first. That he thought everyone could sing in falsetto, and he didn't know that it was something special. And he, the way that they discovered it and decided to start writing for it is he would put a kerchief on in his club act and sort of imitate Rose Murphy and these female singers just as a joke. And then they just started to writing for those notes and push them up into the lead vocal. Similarly, I never knew there would be a story about Frankie Valli, and I was only sort of very kind of distantly aware of the Four Seasons, I mean, because their music is so in our culture. But when I was in college, I would go to karaoke with my friends, you know, on like Friday night, just, and, you know, get drunk, and I would sing Tina Turner songs in her original key to make my friends laugh. I was doing the same thing Frankie Valli was doing a generation earlier, but with my generation's, you know, with Tina Turner. And I didn't know that it was anything.
Tina Turner our generation? Really?
Well, Rose Murphy predated him a little bit, but you know, those are the songs that are on karaoke, the ones that are like 10 years ago.
Yeah.
So it was just a party trick, and I could do it, or I could sing along to Chicago, and you know, the group, not the show, in the car or whatever. But who could have ever guessed that they would be singing falsetto on Broadway?
Because you're naturally a baritone.
Yeah, and so is Frankie.
Oh, really? Okay.
Just I don't know the physics of it, but my voice teacher tells me that people who have a really strong high falsetto are usually baritones, and it's because of the way the vocal cords are structured. I mean, they can resonate at they're longer, so they can resonate at a lower frequency and a higher frequency, just like a guitar string. If you cut it off, you can get a really high note. You know, and so there's more of a range because your vocal cords are longer. That's how she's explained it to me.
When you came, Jonathan, to sing and started rehearsal, did you know everything about singing that you needed to know?
I had taken a couple of voice lessons, but again, it was one of those things where I went to my first audition for Spring Awakening, and our amazing music director, Kim Grigsby, who also can be scary like Michael Mayer. I sang at my audition, my first audition, it was just the two of us, it was just a music work session, and I finished singing the first song, and she looked at me from behind the piano, and she was like, if you want to get this, you have a lot of work to do. And I was like, whoa, okay, nice to meet you. But immediately, I was determined, and she hooked me up with a voice teacher, and you know, we had 3 months after I was cast before we started rehearsals for Off-Broadway.
So you were cast without being able to really sing in a part
the great thing about Spring Awakening, well, the thing about our show specifically is that they look for obviously young people with something unique and something raw, and then if they find someone that they feel like they can develop, they will develop them. And so she saw something, she knew that I could do it with some work, and was willing, you know, if I was willing to put in the time, they were willing to put in the time, and I worked, you know, found a voice teacher, and I've been working really hard ever. I mean, I did the tour of The Sound of Music, but I never really sang, I've never really sang like this or had any really formal training, so.
And this is rock, so that's a little rock and roll.
It's
so
like folky, rocky sort of a thing, tongue-in-cheek sort of a thing.
It's loud.
Right.
It's very loud. We know that.
And so again, the on-the-job sort of training. But again, another one of those things where it's the discomfort in the end that, for me, makes it in the end worthwhile. The thing that you're like, I don't really know if I can do this, but here I go, and you sort of put yourself out there, and whether you fail or succeed, end up learning the most and coming out off for the better.
There's nowhere to hide from the ghost in my mind. It's cold in these bones of a man and a child, and there's no one who knows, and there's nowhere to go. There's no one to see who can see till my soul.
As your voice and your bodies are your instruments, what do you do to keep it in tune? For instance, you have a lot of yelling and screaming and emotional vocal things. What do you have to do?
This is the first time, knock on wood, that I haven't lost my voice in the last 2 shows. In Ishmael, I was constantly on the edge. And our lead, by the end, had such nodes that he wasn't doing matinees. Yeah.
So what did you do?
And then I had to do steroids during Blackbird, during previews. And then, but this one, I've started to warm up. Like, if I was about to do an opera, I've been doing the biggest vocal warm-up ever, and doing yoga, and then breathing, and then doing my steaming, and drinking my throat coat, and having my throat coat pastilles, and then having honey, and then doing all. And literally, if anybody in my cast has an issue, I'm like, come upstairs. Would you like some Mucinex? You can use my steamer if you want.
So you have to do a lot. I don't suppose you go out to discos at night after the show and hang out.
We do karaoke.
Do you really?
Tina Turner.
I've gotten into the standards section of our Roke book. And just you doing like Lullaby of Broadway, and I'll be seeing you, and just like it's fun and it's great, and it's one way where you're not shouting at a bar or you're locked in a room, and it's a way you can go out and be social during a show when you're not like, oh,
Right.
I mean, it's definitely more disciplined than I ever imagined, doing 8 shows a week. I mean, in college, we would rehearse for 3 months and do 4 shows and be it. But for me, it's just, I was just so surprised about how, disciplined it is, and how, we live for our work. Like, we have to, every day I wake up and I go, how is she today?
Yeah.
And, and you can tell, you get to know your voice so well, and you know how it's going to be. And you kind of have to pace yourself because you have the weekend shows, and you have to drink a lot of water, get a lot of rest.
So what do? You drink lots of water?
Yeah.
Do you do hot yoga? Or
no, I do, Pilates when I get ready, but I do throat coat, I do Grithers pastilles, those little glycerin
love
drops.
those.
I have Entertainer's Secret that my dresser carries around just because our theater's so dry.
Yeah.
And it just moistens everything
You can
if you don't
spray
have
it in
time.
your nose too.
Really?
And what is it? What is
That's
it?
It's got glycerin
brilliant.
and it's
amazing.
formulated by a voice doctor, and it totally lubricates and moisturizes.
It's so hard to not go off stage and 45 minutes of yelling and screaming about like, give me my stamps and no water. That's actually what I do. You haven't seen the show.
Give me my stamps.
Yeah, no, you have to give it out.
No, but it's the best.
It would be,
I live for it. I get it by the bulk,
good.
and it's just.
You need to just send her a bottle over at Mauritius.
I will. You'll be getting a present from me.
Every
Don't
time
you
we go,
worry. Oh, this is from MP.
What do you do, Jonathan? Do you do some special exercises or meditation?
The thing that I found for me is that it's different. Every day it's different. I haven't gotten to a place yet where we've been doing the show for a year. Every now and then I'll be like, oh, this is what's happening. But it's like one day you can't breathe out the side of your nose, or like one day your throat is sore, or one day, and you learn tricks of the trade as you go along. Like yesterday, I was stressed out for whatever reason during the day, and I just took a bath before the show. I was like, you know what? I think I need to just take a bath. And I did, and it made me feel so much better. It cleared my head. I go running in the park. I do the Bikram yoga as well.
Hot yoga. But do you do those tongue exercises where you pull your tongue out of your mouth?
No, I don't.
That's a Jersey Boys thing.
You have to do that one? Because aren't there exercises that singers do with their tongues?
Yeah, a lot of opera training starts with pulling your tongue. You have to use a paper towel though, or else they'll slip out of your head.
Like when you're at the dentist.
So is the whole cast?
And you're right. You feel different every day. And when you're doing a show for so long, you develop a technique to sort of get through, and to if you have to yell, then you know what you have to do to yell that day because you've been through it maybe 6 months ago. You're like, oh yeah, I'm not breathing well today, but I'll get the sound this way. It's a constant process.
And I feel like you start learning to give yourself a break. Like for me, if I would have her, make a crack or have a phlegm ball or whatever, you're like, oh my gosh, and you're like, you know what, I'm human. It kind of reminds me you're human again, and you have to give it up because the show has to go on. These people, but you want to be like, I do this 8 times a week. I just want to let y'all know I have a cold today.
Right.
But
and
you
look,
still
if you
get
look
through
out
it.
there, which we do a lot in Jersey Boys because we're singing to them, they don't wince. It's not like they're like, ooh, he cracked, They just keep watching. Oh, do it? I've never seen anyone wince.
Yeah, but sometimes, I think it's endearing for them to see, that's why people go to live theater, to see how people recover. And I think it depends on how you do it. you know, I mean, it's probably not always our favorite thing to have happen because it's embarrassing and you're all of a sudden extremely vulnerable, especially being Mary Poppins and singing Practically Perfect. I have to say, I'm practically perfect. I don't want to be like, I'm really practically today, you know, as underlined. You know, but sometimes you just gotta have to give yourself a break. And I've really come to that point because last year at this time, like I can be somewhat of a perfectionist about myself. And, you know, my performing, I just am always like, sometimes my director is like, Ashley, you can bring it down. You know, you're giving, I'd be about 150% right now. You know, but that's, you know, I'm like, well, I'd rather give more than less, you know, whatever, but, you know, so it's just funny, you know, it's just the things you learn about yourself, and, you know, it's good to be reminded you're human. And
well, what's the worst thing that's happened? I mean, did you ever have a gun not go off, you who were so accustomed to guns?
Yeah.
You had
Really?
Yeah.
You went to
Literally, like, you know, I'm about to kiss my lover, and I'm kissing him, and I'm getting the guns out, and I'm sneaking behind his back, and he's still singing, and then cocking the guns, and click. I'm like,
it's the worst
and
thing.
then like cocking them again, and then like, bang. You know, it's just horrifying. And he's like, what was that, right? Here, let me try again. And he's like about to start singing the song again. Just horrifying.
It can definitely, like, there's a few things that I have to, you know, I'm magical, you know. So I'm, you know,
have to
pulling
fly,
tables
for
up
goodness
and,
sakes.
you know, and put tables back up and talk to birds and things. And it's just really, it's amazing how unmagical you can feel in a split second. Because it obviously, you know, you're having to deal with a lot of people, and if people's headsets come down or if, you know, things aren't working, it's like, I find myself, I'm a crazy person because there's been times in the kitchen where I put back up the kitchen during Spoonful of Sugar and it doesn't go up, and I'm like talking to plates. I'm like, I'll deal with you later. We'll have a talk, won't we? I'm like, am I really talking to a plate like this? You know, like it's amazing what comes out of your mouth, and you're just so thankful it's not a cuss word because you're so just like on adrenaline and just ad-libbing, and I'm like, I was definitely having more conversations than normal with furniture.
Right.
But it's
Do you ever
things
just
happen.
laugh? Do you ever
I
just
do.
like? Last night I literally just went like. There are just some moments when it just needs to come out because something's gone horribly awry, and literally, every time I've tried to hold in a laugh, it's always gone on longer than it should because I'm
You're
just
right.
like,
You just let it out.
if it's just a moment of complete unabashed, excuse me, for a moment I'm just
Yeah. Let me just get it out.
and then come back to it and it's fine. But it's
Because
so
it's that
bad.
decision you have to make. You're like, is it making me a bad actor? Because obviously this has happened.
Yes,
So
yeah.
obviously the house is run over a child. I'm just kidding. No, but like, obviously something has gone wrong. Like I'm upside down in front of an audience on wires. Obviously this is wrong. Do I comment on it or do I let it go? Like, which makes me the better actor? You know, it's like those decisions you have to make.
Yeah.
Like, do we pretend like that didn't happen or that it did happen?
Well, now you've all four had a wonderful success with the plays you're in. Is there something that you're looking forward to doing? Is there a part you've read somewhere or thought of, for instance, with your dark side there? Is there
I just kind
some
of know. I
Shakespearean
just kind of
thing?
know when I read it that I'm like, oh, I'm interested in this.
But do you know what do you have a role somewhere that you would like to play?
I've never behaved that way or thought that way.
Oh, okay, so there's
you
not
know,
something.
there are great roles, but I've actually, because it took a while for me to get a Broadway show, I was doing a lot of stuff that was under the radar and a lot of new things, and I was used to having the playwright in the room and getting rewrites and all that kind of stuff. So I'm actually still interested in new plays and new roles. And I don't know what those are because they don't. If it's Chekhov, it's not new, So I'd love to do Chekhov someday, but I actually am kind of used to doing new things, and I want to continue to do that. And I really am excited by the possibility of finding the thing that the new thing. Like Jersey, actually, or sometimes it finds you. Jersey Boys found me.
That's a good point.
And that's kind of exciting when that happens.
Is there some role that you do so much reading that you've read that you in your mind would
Well,
like
I would
one
love
day?
to do something classical at some point. I mean, I've been lucky enough to be able to work on plays with the playwright in the room, and just there's something really spectacular about that, and about having somebody like a live person that you can talk to about why they wrote this crazy, like talking to David Harrower about Blackbird, just horrifying play. Like, why would you write this? Why? But I would love to do. But I would love to do Shakespeare. I would love to do. I can't wait for that opportunity.
I think that I have three things that for the next thing, because people ask us this all the time on our show, what we want to do after. It's got to be A, something that's completely different than Spring Awakening. B, something where I respect and admire and would learn things from the people that I'm surrounded by. Just because with Spring Awakening, I've learned, because I didn't go to college, I've learned so much about myself and the business and the theater from Michael Mayer and Kim Grigsby and Bill T. Jones and all of these great people. A, B, and then C would be something that's horrifying, something that I'm scared of, because that's really what the thing that has made me grow the most has been jumping into the complete unknown. So I don't know what it would be next, but it has to have those three qualities.
I would really like to do something where I was able to let out something, because I feel my biggest struggle in Mary Poppins is she has to be unaffected by everything. But I think I'm just ready to maybe be angry and be, because I am like a happy person, but I would love to make that next step in finding a deeper role and define, not a deeper role, because I feel like Mary Poppins is extremely deep, but I think that's been my biggest struggle, is I cannot take my daily things into this show. And not that it's but it is kind of, therapeutic in a way to let that out, and I can't ever, because she can't show that she's fazed by things. And that's what me and the director really struggled with, is because I'm such, my face is a book. Like, I'm affected by people and my emotions, and, people hurt my feelings and I let them know about it. And that's been the biggest struggle with Mary Poppins, is to be unaffected. And I'm ready to be able to be affected on stage and to show that I can do other things other than Disney. And not that Disney is all in the same, but in a way, I feel like I am known as the Disney girl, which is a great thing. It's wonderful. I love it. And I love the people I work for, and that day that comes that I break from Disney is going to be extremely emotional, because I've gotten so close with them and I have been so happy and fulfilled. But I think I would definitely go for something very different.
Well, I look forward to seeing you all. I look forward to seeing you very angry somewhere on stage.
Jonathan, very scared.
Very, some horrifying things.
Terrified in a horrifying
Allison's
play.
going to be in Shakespeare. John Lloyd's going to be in Chekhov, and I'm waiting for that day. This was so nice. Thank you so much. I really enjoyed it and learned a lot. And thank you for joining us. These programs are brought to you from the Graduate Center of the City University of New York in partnership with our friends at CUNY TV. On behalf of the American Theater Wing, I'm Pia Lindstrom. Thanks for joining us for another edition of Working in the Theater.
The American Theater Wing has played a vital role in New York's theatrical life for more than 60 years. We stand for excellence, and we support education in the theater.
Best known for creating the Tony Award, our work reaches beyond Broadway and New York.
These seminar programs, which are supported by the Annenberg Foundation and the Dorothy Strelson Foundation, are an unequal forum for discussions with today's most creative artists.
Downstage Center's in-depth interviews are heard on XM Satellite Radio. Our grant and scholarship programs support New York theater companies and theater students. And since we began, we have given away more than $2.5 million.
Our theater intern group helps young people who are just starting in their careers build a professional network.
And Springboard NYC is a 2-week boot camp for aspiring actors from colleges across the country.
All of the American Theater Wing's educational and media programs are available for free, on demand, from our website, americantheaterwing.org.